Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the session on urban industrial solutions and business opportunities with a focus on urban innovation and smart solutions. My name is Olga Memedovic and I'm Chief of Business Environment, Clusters and Innovation Division of UNIDO, and I will lead you through this session and its discussion. The session will address how innovative cities, ideas, concepts, and emerging technologies such as Internet of Things, Internet of Services, Internet of People, Internet of Energy, in other words, Internet of Everything, also known as Fourth Industrial Revolution or Industry 4.0, can transform cities into sustainable cities. Why smart cities initiatives? Because cities occupy less than 0.5% of the world's land area and host about 51% of the world's population. Cities consume around 80% of our planetary resources, account for more than 70% of global energy consumption, emit up to 60% of the world's total greenhouse gases, and produce great amount of waste. But cities are also a powerful force for economic development and shared prosperity. Cities account, on average, about 75% of countries' GDP. They are crucial for division of labor, productivity, knowledge spillovers, innovation, and technological change. The accelerated urbanization we are witnessing, it is estimated to result in around 70% of global population living in urban areas by 2050. Our future is definitely urban. 90% of the urban population growth will take place in Africa and Asia. In Africa, the primary beneficiaries of urbanization so far have been informal services with little productivity gains and not manufacturing. This premature deindustrialization has resulted in precarious employment and triggered migration waves. If the rapid urbanization continues, it will create huge demand pressure for infrastructure, for utilities, for creating decent jobs, for preserving environment and addressing climate change. This will become a major challenge for city planners, policymakers, and the international community at large. Realizing sustainable cities using intelligent technological solutions and approaches will be crucial in addressing global challenges and achieving 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Can Internet of Everything solve these problems? Industry 4.0 has the potential to change the way cities are governed, managed, and planned. It will penetrate all aspects of city life, from transportation, housing, energy production, distribution, and consumption, to manufacturing and urban vertical farming, and to more efficient waste, water, and sewage management system. Cities can reinvent themselves. They can become areas of innovation and technology parks. Today, we have representatives from academia, industry, and government to address urban applications and smart solutions of these ideas, concepts, and technologies with the challenges for developing countries in mind. Let me introduce our distinguished keynote speakers and panelists. Our first keynote speaker is Professor Sebastian Lund from the Austrian Federal Ministry for Transport, Innovation and Technology. He is also working at Vienna Technical University and for Fraunhofer, Austria, and he will address the issues of how Industry 4.0 is part of smart city. Our second speaker to my left is Mr. Liu Chuangkai from Alibaba Cloud Europe. He will elaborate how big data help the city to think and make decisions, showing the examples of the Alibaba City Brain project. Keynotes will be followed by expert discussion from industry and government, who will provide insights into their respective experience and field of work in smart cities context. Mr. Florian Jager from Siemens Munich, to my right, then Mr. Okan Gerey from Smart City Dubai, Mr. Markus Kontinger from IBM, to my left, and Mr. Nekmetin Kaymaz, Investment Support and Promotion Agency, Turkey. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm also inviting you to share your thoughts and ask questions to our distinguished speakers and panelists, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion. With this introductory note, I would like to invite Professor Lund to give his keynote speech.
Olga, and thank you very much for the invitation and the chance to give this keynote speech on, I've called it Shaping a Smart World, and as you know, 10 minutes, it's not that much time to set the stage for the intersection between Industry 4.0 and smart city initiatives. I've chosen the heading Shaping a Smart World because, of course, we're talking about smartness, about smart city, about connectivity and the connection between intelligent people, intelligent devices and machines. We're talking about a worldwide perspective, not only in terms of developed countries, but also in terms of developing countries. And as you know, the process of the creation of smart cities is an ongoing issue. It's not finished yet. And that's basically the first intersection between Industry 4.0 and smart cities. Everybody's basically talking about it, but nobody really knows how it will look like. And that's the process we are in, or we are right in the middle. And I'm pretty eager on sharing your view and the views of the panelists on this issue. So, of course, Industry 4.0 and smart cities are visions. I think they are very good visions because they both base on the expectation that technology will solve our today's problems. And for Industry 4.0, that's basically the problem or the challenge of productivity and prosperity, because at least the developed countries, but also developing countries, face an era of decreasing productivity rates. And as you know, new technologies might change this. And as most of us see a relation between prosperity and productivity, this is the challenge for Industry 4.0. And for the smart city initiatives, basically, the challenge is, as Olga already pointed out, an increase in world population to expected, 8 or 9 or 10 billion people in 2050, but also the shrinking of rural population. And as you already mentioned, quite some numbers for urbanization. I'd add another one that's, for me, the most interesting one. I think every week 1 million people worldwide move from dwellings from rural environment to cities. So 1 million people every week, and that trend is going to continue, I think, in the future. At least I don't see any changes within this trend. So we expect an ever-increasing population of cities, up to another or doubling of the city sizes within the next 30 years. And there are not only changes from the inside of moving people from rural landscapes to cities, there are changes or challenges from the outside too. All of us have to deal with the issue of sustainability and with at least a field increase in emissions and catastrophes. So we don't have to talk about hot summers. Even in Vienna, we experienced, I think, the hottest summer over the last 50 years with 30 or 35 degrees over 3 months now. And in Rome, even the water supply of the fountains stopped. Of course, as you know, that's nothing against other catastrophes in other parts of the world. And of course, industrialization is causing us trouble. Poverty is decreasing, but it's still widespread. And they're basically the issues all of us have to deal with, and at least, or especially within the city context. And that's probably the reason why smart city initiatives arise all over the world. We've got this initiative in Vienna, in the smart city in Aspern, in the 22nd district. An entire new district is developed. I'm originally from Berlin. Of course, there's a smart city initiative in Berlin, as it is in Copenhagen, as it is in Istanbul, as it is in New York, as it is in India. And I don't want to bore you with the 80 governmental funded smart city initiatives in India now. And of course, as we are talking this issue worldwide, there's of course an initiative in South Africa and Cape Town as well. I fancy that one too. So pretty much that's a worldwide issue that is based on some underlying technologies. And as Olga already pointed out too, smart cities and Industry 4.0, they pretty much base on the technology and the idea of the Internet of Things, which is, in a nutshell, making dumb objects intelligent by the use of sensors and sometimes actors as well. And as we've got that many panelists that will talk this through after me, I just took 3 little examples with me. You probably know the first one, the intelligent waste bins. Here are the London waste bins that have some sensors that detect how much waste is put in a waste bin in order to call the people to collect the waste. And they are used right now to display the stock markets. They are used to give you information about the next tube timetable and so on. So dump waste bins tend to be intelligent right now, not only in London. Second example, it's my old BMW, built in 2004, and that's not necessarily an example of an Internet of Things or intelligent car. At least it's not a diesel engine. So 2004, but this one is intelligent as well, because usually it's me who is driving this using a smartphone, and that's collecting data from myself, that's making an intelligent car out of this BMW, providing every one of you who is using Vienna Street with floating car data, and giving me location-based services that perhaps will help me, perhaps not, but that's a development. And the third example, it's a tree. You might wonder, or perhaps know it, we are considering an Internet of Trees as well. So if you think that through, equipping all trees that we have with sensors, you might find new business models for the forestry industry. You might even find necessary data, for example, the traffic forecasts, when you know which tree has fallen down after a storm. Don't laugh at this point, there's a serious business behind this. But of course, and we'll probably go into detail too, there are some security and safety issues coming with this Internet of Things. You see the blue screen at the London waste bin there, flipped upside down, but it's a nice one too. So this Internet of Things is already part of a system of systems which consists of an Internet of People, which is basically us. And as you know, there's a smartphone coverage of over 100% within this room. I expect every one of you having one smartphone, and I've got 2, so it's over 100%. We already got this Internet of People. We are developing this Internet of Things within a city context, within an industrial context, and this Internet of Services is basically making money out of it, which is created by the Alibabas, by the Siemens of this world too. So, last point on technology, it's not only the Internet of Things, there are quite a few other technologies that are on the edge of being applicable and industrially feasible, which is basically additive manufacturing, which is artificial intelligence. Everybody is talking about the impact of machine learning on employment right now. That's autonomous driving. Augmented and virtual reality have become feasible as well with the Google Glass. I'm sorry for that. Intelligent things, but not intelligent people, or not me. Augmented and virtual reality have become feasible by Google Glasses, by HoloLens and the other stuff. And we probably will talk about blockchain technology within the panel discussion. So that's basically the reason why we consider a new era that's based on internet and mobile communication. And if you know Kondratiev and the Kondratiev cycle, everybody is basically talking about this next Kondratiev cycle where we are at the beginning, or at least not at the end yet. So these developments, these challenges and these technological developments will have an impact on basically our life, our work and everything we do. And it will have an impact on energy, on buildings, on mobility and communication, on markets. And as I am heading or having a chair on work science, on industrial engineering, I'm going to present you some examples for the future of work. On the left-hand side, thank you, Oliver, that all the videos are running. You see some examples out of our pilot factory in Vienna with the university and the Fraunhofer colleagues. There are, by the use of the Internet of Things, there are new forms of scheduling and planning are possible, and you see this manufacturing of the desktop PCs, which is basically implemented with conditions that change their behavior in order of what you are doing and who you are. We equipped there a so-called activity-based lighting that changes its color and its brightness depending on what you do, who you are, and where you are. You see augmented and virtual reality in the middle and the use of lightweight robots without fences. It was not me, sorry. Lightweight robots without fences just at the bottom. And if you would imply these technologies within your factory, you see that there's not that much steam anymore, that there's not that much oil anymore, not that much dust. That would perhaps make it possible to reconsider manufacturing within an urban context again. And as my time is running out, I think there are some examples on the right-hand side how this Internet of Things could shape cities. I think 2 of these videos are already 3 years old. The one on top is basically an idea on how a smart city with smart building and smart energy could look like. The one at the top, at the bottom, how the future of work would look like. And my recent favorite is the video in the middle. They're all videos of my former Fraunhofer colleagues. The one in the middle is a study that Audi has conducted with Fraunhofer about autonomous driving, and they basically target the question of how the people that is not driving anymore, that is basically sitting within an autonomous car, is doing while the car is driving. So they are conducting this survey now, this study now, on what you can do, how you could work within this autonomous car, and they are shaping business models out of it in order to replace their sold cars today with sold working time in an autonomous car in the future. So that's about it. I'll come to the end with a few ideas on how smart cities and Industry 4.0 could be used in developing countries. Of course, there are some opportunities and challenges. The bullet points basically correspond with each other. I think it would be a chance, an opportunity to leapfrog infrastructure developments. Like in 80-50, 80-60, 80-70, when Austria or Hungary leapfrogged a little bit the steam era, coming to an industrialization. So investments in internet infrastructure, in broadband, could have the chance to leapfrog developed countries who are good in roads and road infrastructure and so on. Of course, infrastructure has to be stable in order to provide everything you need for new services. As far as I've experienced it in developing countries, there is a larger public and private embracement of new technologies. So if we talk through technologies in Middle Europe, there are quite a few discussions, and there are, there always are many people to be convinced, and of course there are a few doubts and resistance, and this of course could be a chance in developing countries. On the other hand side, I fancy very much all the laws and legislation we've got on privacy issues in Austria, in Germany, in the EU. And third, opportunity and challenge at the same time are the people in developing countries. On the one hand side, it's, I think, the biggest talent pool we have, and as far as I know, the people there are potentially willing to change the world. They're well educated and well trained, and I think it's up to us to lead them within the fields of engineers, IT, and entrepreneurship. And on the other hand side, of course, you need IoT expertise that is not equally distributed over the world. There are probably more people at Alibaba, Siemens, or IBM sitting that are good in IoT than in some of the countries of the world. So that was me with a brief overview of my ideas on Industry 4.0 and smart cities, and I'm very eager on the discussion. Have I done something wrong?
Thank you, Professor Lund. It was a great presentation. Of course, we understand that you need to set the stage first, and then it went to the very core issues. So to be democratic, I will also give 15 minutes to our guest from Alibaba, Liu Chunkai. So then we will have 2 keynote speakers with the same time allocated to each of them.
Thank you. It's a great honor to exchange with the experts here at UNIDO. So my name is Chunkai Liu from Alibaba Europe, based in Paris. So maybe we are quite new to this ecosystem, and Alibaba initially was e-commerce company. So I would like to first start with a few phrases about a brief introduction about what we do and why smart city is associated also to an e-commerce company like us. So, and I will also talk about a very concrete project with our humble contribution to help to improve the traffic situation of the city of Hangzhou, where maybe Hangzhou is where actually the G20 was held in Hangzhou last year. So it's not the biggest city in China, but it's a quite big city with 10 million inhabitants. So the traffic is also a big problem. We are actually starting from the e-commerce business. That was from helping the SMB from developing countries to become a global, to do global business through the B2B platform. And today we actually evolved to different various fields in the multimedia entertainment fields. We are in the multimedia, music, video, music, games, movies, sports business. We are also in the doing the online to offline business, like doing auto navigation for the automobile, travel and ticketing services. And actually, as we usually consider ourselves as a data company, because these are all about the data that are generated by the users. That's why we have the Alibaba Cloud, which is a service that provides big data and computing capabilities to the various business. So we started from China, and today we are moving to the world with footprints in Europe, America, Middle East, APAC, and China. Briefly, I'll go to the smart city part, and this is the footprint of data center in the world. And also, we're very proud to be able to be a partner of the Olympic Games to digitalize the games that have been running for more than 100 years, using the e-commerce and also the cloud technology to modernize these very classic and traditional games. Because we have developed the big data and AI technologies, I would like to take an example of the Hangzhou city of how we solve the problem. So first, maybe we don't know, but actually Hangzhou is not the capital, but Hangzhou is, according to some statistics, Hangzhou is the second most congested city in China. And there are more than 120 days of smoggy days. So there are many cars. So this is a common problem for many developing countries and cities because they want to follow the developed country style of life, and the style of life of developed country is having a car. But that is a problem. However, we find a potential solution. But today, the city municipality, city governments, they are actually the centralized point to have access to different types of data, from the data of the road situation, intersections, the traffic camera, the taxi, the bus, and the toll gates. All this data, they are available either directly or indirectly to the cities. But today, this data, they sleep, and actually, city don't know how to use them efficiently. So what we do is to help in this project of Hangzhou is to help them to break the silo between the data and to make the city governor have a real-time view of the current situation of the traffic, and also provide intelligence so that they can take measures to reduce the traffic congestion by, for example, controlling the traffic light, make it longer or shorter according to the situation. This looks easy, but the whole system is quite complex, actually, because first we need to inject data from various sources. So this is a very complex coordination with the public and the private sectors, and then integrate this data and build a platform as a service with various models. And then on top of this model, we can actually build traffic congestion forecast system, crowd distribution system, and take actions. Without going to very detail of the technology, because this is not the idea, but I would like to show you the first result of this, how data technology can help to improve city traffic situation. So this is a real dashboard that is used by the control center of the city of Hangzhou. So now the city center has a unified and homogeneous view of the situation of the city. Sorry for the Chinese, because this is a real dashboard in Hangzhou. So they will have the data from the police station, from all the signaling of the city, and also public transport index, social index, weather information, and also the status of all the main street of the city. Yeah, some of the examples. So this is an example of how they use the data. So by crossing all the data, comparing the real-time situation and the historic information, and through the deep learning technologies, actually the city can very quickly rank in terms of situation. What are the outstanding problem of such as this example? For this is a bridge, so they actually look at the auxiliary road. What is the outstanding problem of that? So this is a red point, and then they will see that on the left side, compared to the historic behavior, the traffic today is very congested, because it's the speed is lower than the speed of the cars is lower than the regular situation. So some actions need to take, and also this is an example of checking the upper part of the bridge, checking the speed, and then by comparing the different data, and the city can know that this part today is not normal, so there's something to do. And also it's the similar use case to check the traffic situation, outstanding situation of some intersection. And also the alarming system through the intelligence of the video camera. In China, actually in the road, there are video cameras that trace all the cars, and based on the movements of the car, the behavior of the cars, we can actually extract some interesting information and then prevent the city of what happened. This is, I'll go through the example. For example, by analyzing the commuting information of some important section of the road, using 1 year's data, even longer, we have the city to identify the different types of congestion. Of course, there's the commuting period for the morning and the evening. Also, there are the situation about that is not linked to the work, and also some congestion situation linked to the event, such as the G1 event, G20 event in Hangzhou. And through the modeling and also comparing the volume of the car's speed, we actually thanks to the AI technology, are able to identify the different patterns of behavior, whether it is falls into a congestion behavior or it's in a fluid behavior zone. And one example, if I may click on this. One example is that we can actually let we call it ET brain, actually our city brain, to study all the historical data of the cars' behavior throughout the years, and by comparing them to the current real-time situation of the city, we can actually identify that this current situation match a certain trend of the pattern that we have learned in the past, and so we know that it's going to be congested in the next hour, or it's not going to be congested, because we have extracted this characteristic of traffic situation from all the data in the past through the deep learning. Yeah, so this is the whole box behind this, which we applied the feature analysis technology, the big data engine, and extract the characteristic feature information and mine. We mine the data to find out this index. And the result is that after this 1 year of implementation, we managed actually to help the city to reduce the congestion of, this is one pilot road, it's called Moganshan Road in Hangzhou, very busy area. And we managed to lower down the congestion kilometers from 200 kilometers per month to less than 50 kilometers per month. So this is divided by 4 times the congestion. How can we do it? Because we compare with the behavior, then we can predict the potential congestion situation and ask the police to do intervention and also block, maybe limited the access. And so these are the actions that we recommend to the police station. And to finish, some key learnings of this kind of smart city project is we share some common points with Mr. Professor Lund. I didn't saw your PPT before, but I saw some common points. Is that the municipality plays a key role in making the convergence and also the conformity of the data, and of course coordinate with different partners. The PPP, so public-private partnership, is a key, and also the city management, we think that should go from administrative or experience-based management to data-driven management. We should objectively look at the data, see the trends in data, and then make decision. The experience is something that is on top, that's an add value, but the data is really the basis to make decision. And the local talents, yeah, because to make this happen, we need to build a talent pool of local talents, especially young talents. That's why also we have the university program to work with the local university to actually train the future talents of big data, because they are very, the potential of the young generation is really underestimated, and they can really do some creative things on this. And similarly, we think that in this new revolution era, big data could be a leapfrog for developing countries, because it may take time to gain industry experience, to build factories, to build infrastructure, but it can take much shorter time to build competence and talents in big data and make them a very advanced service for the cities and of course for the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chung Kai. We have learned how artificial intelligence can be used to make Hangzhou city more sustainable and smart. You have highlighted very important aspects, preconditions to this to be realized. And I would now go directly to panelists, and after that we will come back to each our guests today, speakers and panelists, on additional questions. So to save the time, I will not go to questions now, but we go straight to the our panel. And the first panelist is Markus Kottinger from IBM Austria. He will address the issues of solutions, Industry 4.0 solutions related to energy, water, transport in the city context. Markus, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to present IBM ideas in the smart city and IoT context. Actually, our initiative about smart cities is already couple of decades old, I would say. There was this slogan, smart people for a smarter planet. We are also born in the cloud, so to say. That means we are starting from the data we can provide, we can use here. We have applications where you can manage the whole infrastructure here. But the core element for us is not only the experience of the people who run the city, who manage the city, it's more the combination of the data we have in all the different organizations in the city and the silos. And for us, the most important part is cooperation. We heard the word ecosystem already. In Austria, there is a huge cooperation between the national telecom provider A1 and Nokia. Where we are addressing cities in Austria and in Central Eastern Europe with our solutions. And this is definitely one prototype, one pilot process which could be used also in developed countries. Imagine that the integration of smartphones and mobile devices in developed countries is increasing much, much quicker than we have in Europe or in the US. Therefore, the devices are there. We had also our example with the BMW, where the device is actually in your pocket. It's a smartphone, not the BMW itself. And we had already the discussion about traffic. Traffic management is, in our case, one example from Stockholm, but we have definitely also requests from developing countries where we are in charge of leading the so-called Smart City Challenge. So cities can apply at the IBM experts with their ideas how to optimize city operation, where traffic is definitely one big issue. Another big issue is crime protection. Based on the latest incidents we had all over the world, there are more and more cities addressing us with the public safety and security story. And finally, it's also an issue of cost effectiveness. But I guess my fellow speaker of Smart City Dubai will also address some new stuff. And especially with the city of Dubai, we are working on blockchain projects. So you see, we are not only thinking about optimizing the operations of city, but also thinking about what are the next steps. And due to the fact that the IT environment is available not only in Europe or in US, but also in developing countries, I see definitely a potential that we have this trend in all countries all over the world. And maybe we see the same result like we have saw with the smartphone development, that development countries are increasing and applying these solutions much more quicker than we do in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Markus. Thank you. It was very insightful for the very short period of time. I'm sure that we'll come back to you with a lot of questions because you utilized your time strictly. Thank you for that. Okay, now we will go to Florian Jager from Siemens. And he will give us some insight on intersection of the Internet of Energy in the smart city context.
Thank you very much, Olga, for this introduction and the opportunity to be on this panel and discuss with you together how we are going to shape the future with IoT and how we are going to improve people's lives, of course. I'm going to start directly with basically the most mature area of IoT, which is in industry automation. And Siemens is very strong in this area. And additionally to that, of course, we have a lot of portfolio in all sorts of power application, from generation to transmission and distribution. So it was a very easy step to kind of do that transition into that very different vertical. So most applications in IoA are basically predictive maintenance, for example, of gas turbines, or energy demand management and resource optimization. This basically all leads to, in developing countries, the reduction of, for example, non-technical losses, or to reduce the downtime of networks in developed countries. These are not really the low-hanging fruits. We are focusing basically on decentralization and being able to include more and more shares of renewable that are generated decentralized with all over the system, and in increasing the resilience, such as in the US, for example. These are all kind of conventional applications, I'd say, because they are happening in one vertical. But we believe that the real benefits will really show when we look into the cross verticals. For example, this is an e-car operation center that we have executed in Italy and rolled out in quite a large scale actually already. There is an application similar to that in Vienna as well. So we are not only managing the fleets, we are not only managing the charging stations, but we also do the billing. And in addition to that, basically as a co-benefit, we are now able to do or make load management and services to the distribution system operators available. This is going to get bigger and bigger, of course, due to the fact that we have all sorts of electrification trends within mobility. But this is really just one part. We have the MindSphere application, or not application, but it's a platform that aggregates all sorts of IoT services, basically allowing all sorts of stakeholders, not only Siemens infrastructure, of course, to get from the physical infrastructure to the digital part, and creating apps on top of that in order to provide services. This is basically just a platform, but it has to be filled with life and it has to be filled with benefit. So we are taking this now to cities. And cities are a huge application, as we've just heard from the previous speakers, and also in the introduction that we have a huge growing market here. And we have large challenges that we have to address. For example, air pollution. So I'd like to give you a little introduction of a pilot project that we executed with the city of Nuremberg. The deputy mayor, Peter Pluschke, actually sits in the back there. He did a phenomenal job driving this approach of not only having smart infrastructure, but also including it in a smart governance concept driven through his organization, which is quite a challenge since not all verticals, such as energy, buildings, and transportation, always talk to each other. So we are focusing on air pollution here in this case, carbon emissions. We look at what the city, what's the state currently, where the issues are. We predict and forecast these emissions based on basically looking at the infrastructure, going through a half-a-year data collection process of mainly statistical data that is initially from some IoT applications, of course, too. And with that, we drive a contribution analysis and forecasting. So this is the forecast of different emissions, as an example from Vienna, just from the transportation vertical. And here we see basically which part of the infrastructure to address first in order to come up with a feasible concept to reduce air pollutants. And on top of that, we are now driving a set of levers, a large variety of levers, we call them, different infrastructure measures that we can introduce to the city at different implementation rates and calculate the impacts on all sorts of emissions, local jobs, CAPEX, OPEX. And with that, we go into workshops. We provide that information to basically all sorts of department heads from transportation, building, energy, as well as people from the utilities. They sit on one table and they really get this data in order to come up with a future scenario on how their city should be developing. This is a very long-term approach. Of course, the projects take like from half a year to a year, and you get a forecast up to like 20, 25 years. But many cities have real-time problems, they have issues at individual stations now. And therefore, in order to offer something in that case, we have to go real-time, meaning we have to go MindSphere in Siemens slang. So we have to draw information such as from air pollution stations, measurement stations that we bind into our system, as well as from traffic management, weather forecasts into our system, and we build apps on top of that. So this information that is drawn historically, that is drawing historical data and real-time data, goes basically through machine learning process in order to come up with a forecast. And on top of that forecast, we can now identify, all right, in 3 or 4 days, we'll have a big issue with air pollutants, nitrogen oxides at a certain station. And we run certain short-term levers again in order to allow cities to basically prepare their population for individual challenges that are coming, and basically tell them that a certain share of parking lots, for example, will be blocked. Thank you very much.
Florian, thank you. It was very insightful about how to monitor CO2 emissions and find a solution in real time. And now we go to Okan Garay, who was a principal advisor for Smart City Dubai. And he will give us some examples, his experience with the Smart City Dubai project.
Thank you very much, Olga, and thank you very much also for the organizers for arranging this highly beneficial event for all of us. I'm going to be talking about the Smart City Initiative of Dubai in the next 5 minutes, so it's a challenge, to be honest with you, after lunch to go through everything in 5 minutes. And I work in the Smart Dubai office, which is the strategy and policy unit of Smart City Initiative. And I have joined in 2002 Dubai government. And what you see up here in the right-hand corner, 90% of it didn't exist actually when I joined Dubai. So it's a highly dynamic and vibrant city in general. And we've gone through 3 generations of digital transformation in the past, I would say 17 years. The first one was the e-government initiative, launched early 2000. And then we had the 2013 Smart Government Initiative, and end of 2014, we have launched the Smart City Initiative, and it was launched by His Highness, actually, the ruler of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and he gave us the vision to us, which is all about people. So for us, it's not about technology, it's not about all these solutions, but it's all about people at the end of the day. And our vision was given to us as a mandate to make Dubai the happiest city on earth. So I think it sounds very simple and reasonable, but trust me, it's said easier than done. We had to reverse engineer happiness, and I can probably spend 2 days on it, presenting all the things we have done, which I won't do now, but it's a very challenging thing. And it's all about social impact at the end of the day. Even though we use high technology in Dubai, it's all about people and making them happy. So for us, technology is the enabler. It's just the means to the end, and the end is happiness and people at the end of the day. And in our strategy, which we just formulated and launched, which is the 5-year strategy until 2021, end of 2021, is not about enablement, but it's about impact on the city. And the impact we measure in 3 dimensions. This is actually the standard triple bottom line that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. So the first is about customer impact, which is the social impact. The second one is the financial impact, or the economic impact in general. And the third one is the environmental impact, which we called resource and infrastructure impact on the city. And our, in my opinion, differentiating factor as a city globally is our vision of becoming the happiest city on earth, and also having a positive impact with respect to all these 3 dimensions. So the strategy entails achieving tens of billions of dollars of savings for the city, not expenditures, but savings, and drastically reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We have a target of 16% reduction, 7% renewable energy at the city level, and a bunch of other KPIs which create efficiencies at the city level. So taking those into account, those 3 impact areas, we have come up with 6 main dimensions. These are the typical, the smart living, smart economy, smart society, smart mobility, smart governance, and also smart environment. So we put some high-level strategic objectives, but what we have done is we have come up with 100 KPIs at the city level. Only one of them is happiness out of these 100. The remaining 99, we have 42 KPIs which are specific to us as a city, which is our strategic direction. And the 58 KPIs, we call them Tier 2, is the Smart City Index developed by ITU and UNEC and all the UN agencies at the moment. So we are benchmarking, and we were the first pilot city in the world actually by ITU for this index. So we have also international indexes for benchmarking, but the 42 that I mentioned, we have a bunch of KPIs at the city level. Just to give you an example, on the public sector side, by the end of 2021, we want 100% digital adoption of our services. Not enablement, but adoption. So by definition, all services must be digitally available, but we also want 100% digital adoption. Another KPI that, I'm just giving you examples out of the 42, we want 100% of eligible transactions in the government to be conducted by blockchain. So right now, as we speak, we are going through an exercise of identifying the eligible services in the government and then converting them into blockchain. As I mentioned, we have 16% greenhouse gas reductions, 8 to 10% demand efficiency for water and energy, which will enable us save, again, close to almost $5 or $6 billion of savings in the long run. So all these KPIs that we put, 12% autonomous mobility by the end of 2021. So these KPIs, in a way, when you put the targets, it gives you a strategic gap. It gives you almost a gap to close in general. And then what we do is, with that gap, we come up with action items. So it's not about just thinking about a solution and then seeing what it entails, but it's working backwards. If this is our target, if this is what we want to achieve, what are the action items, the solutions, things that we are discussing all day long today? What are those things that we can do to achieve these targets for us? And if we achieve those targets, what are the impacts, social impacts, economic impacts, and the environmental impacts? So it's almost like a two-step strategy of putting the targets for KPIs, and then and how to achieve them through action items. And if we achieve those targets, then what are the things in terms of impact on the city with respect to social, economic, and environmental dimensions? So I'm not going to go through the details of those, but in terms of lessons learned, extremely important is to have a clear vision and strategy of these KPIs that I mentioned, action items. We have 600 action items already in addition to the 100 KPIs. So those 600 intend to accomplish those 100 KPIs at the city level. Leadership and governance, extremely important. The ruler of Dubai himself is actually overseeing what we do and whether we are achieving results or not. Impact on people, I mentioned it, extremely important, social impact. So KPIs, having targets, and then based on those targets, doing the action items are extremely, because then you have a purpose, you know what to achieve. It's not that you are just trying to achieve something without concrete targets. Formal impact management, we have established an Office of Smart City Impact Management. We call it actually awesome, it's quite interesting, OSCIM. It's awesome in the sense of Office of Smart City Impact Management to measure all these impacts and KPIs, which I just highlighted. And of course, Industry 4.0 is an enabler for us, and the disruptive and emerging technologies are extremely important. So we are right now piloting various technologies which is in the spectrum of Industry 4.0 and public and private partnerships. None of this can be achieved without the engagement of people and also private sector. So we are working very closely in terms of solutions, in terms of the impacts that we intend to achieve at the city level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Okan. It was great to learn about experience of Smart City Dubai and what is very important to have this strategic approach from vision to measurable targets and action, and the end to the measuring KPIs and impact, and then the role of the governance. So I would now give the floor to Mr. Necmettin Kaymaz, who will further the issue of impact and impact investment, and what is his experience with impact investment in these new technologies for realizing smart cities.
Thank you, Olga. I think you and me, we are the only one who didn't have any smart presentation. You're excused because you're moderator, so hence I'm the only one with no presentation. But I will talk about our smart policies, especially in terms of foreign direct investment, how it could create an impact on the society. And we do believe it can play a critical role in transforming current cities into smart cities, especially considering the contributions that foreign direct investment would bring to developing countries such as Turkey in terms of technology, know-how, and most importantly, capital and funding, which is needed for projects to be implemented in cities. The overall impact is, of course, as Okan said, the ultimate goal is happiness of the society. So we are not there just to implement a project for the sake of implementing that project. If it has an impact on the overall economy as well as on the daily life of people, that means something for us. And when we look at the impact of those investments, we look at how it makes it easy for people to access public services, especially. It could be transportation, it could be healthcare, it could be some other public services. And of course, enhancing quality of services, that's also important, and through mechanism that it brings through either feedback or through the technology itself which is employed, which enhance the quality of services in a better way. And of course, upgrading the infrastructure, both physical and technological and other infrastructures, which are required to uptake those emerging technologies to develop and also to adopt and to implement. And of course, the environmental impact of those investments either could be direct impact, could be renewable, it could be waste management, or it could be indirect impact, such as the technology itself, which is employed in manufacturing, let's say, which is more environment friendly, and which is also has social aspects, and of course efficiency in terms of cost, in terms of time, which all contribute to the overall well-being of economy and people. And last but not least is, of course, the inclusive growth aspect of those investments, especially in terms of creating jobs for youth, for female. And we have very good examples in Turkey in this regards. For example, Vodafone has one of the largest foreign invest in Turkey. They have exclusive program for female entrepreneurs in collaboration with the government. And but as the previous speaker said, in terms of implementing these smart policies, public-private partnership is imperative. And we have implemented many projects in Turkey through public-private partnerships. I'll give you one example. For example, which has, of course, many aspects in terms of impact on the society. Turkey has embarked on a comprehensive healthcare transformation program, and it has committed to build dozens of healthcare campuses. We would say, actually they're called in Turkey city hospitals. They're not just hospitals, they are integrated healthcare complexes offering many services, not only healthcare services, but also they are center of science and technology. And they're using most advanced technologies to offer their services. They're using smart technologies in their building, in their construction, and they're also using digital technology to monitor and to control the data so that they could come up with better control, better management, and also reduce the risks of any negative consequences. And the other case is, of course, again, a foreign investment initiative, which was by, again, two foreign investors in mobile communication infrastructure. It's, again, Vodafone and another foreign investment in Turkey. They have won a bid in Turkey, and they're going to develop and improve the mobile communication infrastructure in Turkey, in the regions where currently we don't have infrastructure. I think that's also very important in terms of cities, because as we have talked about and previous speakers and yourself talked about, urbanization is in a rapid process, and urban centers are rapidly growing. Internal migrations toward the urban centers is increasing. That is a challenge. I think there are many ways, of course, to face those challenges. One of them is to take the services to those people who are seeking services in the urban centers. So you go to the rural area, you take the services to the rural areas where people can easily access to those services. I think that's also one of the most important aspects of facing those emerging challenges. I think we will have more time for question and answers. That's all for now from me.
Thank you, Mr. Kleimas. So we have now completed our official program of this panel. So I would now encourage the questions from the floor. We have additional 15 minutes, which will be also provided translation to our exchange. But after that, translation will not be provided. So I will give these 10 minutes for interaction with the floor. So the floor is open for your questions. Please, if you have any questions, first introduce yourself. Any questions?
Thank you. My name is Roxana Predeu. I'm working for Kapstraficom in Vienna. I have a question for Mr. Okangerai about the City of Dubai. I've known about this initiative. I've admired the Smart City Dubai initiative for a while. You mentioned the KPIs. Would you be willing to share the definition of the KPIs and the way you are measuring them with the rest of the public? That's one question. The second question is, how does the City of Dubai plan to decrease its dependency on the fossil fuels for the next years? And how do you see this embedded in the concept of smart city, energy efficiency, renewable energies? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. In terms of the KPIs, as I mentioned, 58 of them are already international ones, and they are available. They have just been published by ITU with the support of United Nations agencies in a flipbook, and it's online available in the U4SSC website, United for Smart Sustainable Cities website, and also in the ITU website. So we are using those definitions. The remaining 42, I already mentioned some of them with even the targets we have. My suggestion would be not to use what Dubai uses, because those are specific to our context and to our city. And I strongly believe that each and every city is different in terms of their context and in terms of what they can achieve. So in that sense, I would recommend the rest probably to be specific to each and every city. Informally, I can share some of them if you want, probably offline even, because we don't have time. On the other hand, coming to the second question, we have actually very concrete targets in terms of the environmental side. So we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 16%. We want to reduce demand on water and also energy by 8 to 10% by 2021. And we have put together 9 demand-side action items. So it includes things like restructuring tariffs, building codes, retrofitting existing buildings, Palm District cooling in general, and a few other things also. These are direct and renewable energy. We want to achieve 7% renewable energy through solar. So these are things that will hopefully help us to get away from the fossil usage. As you know, Dubai actually does not produce oil. Some people think that we are heavy oil producers, but that's Abu Dhabi, not Dubai. Only 3% of the GDP of Dubai comes from oil and gas industry at the moment. But we, of course, rely heavily on, fossil fuels at the moment. So there will be a shift gradually away from those. Thank you.
Any other question, please? The floor is yours, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you for taking my question. My name is Jürgen Gutmeier. I'm CEO of Your Digital Innovation. We operate a citizen engagement platform which is called joinsmart.city. I'm 20 years in the telecom business. I started with the smart cities with all the things, but 1 year ago I thought it's a major topic that we include the citizens in this development. And I would be interested to know from Dubai, from any of your projects, in which process at the beginning are you engaging the local people? So, because, for instance, the colleague from Dubai said happiness is the most important KPI. You need to engage them very early so that the road where we are going really goes into a direction with the people. Can you tell us your experience? I would be very thankful for this. Thank you.
I think also we will give also chances to others if they want to answer that, but I think Orkan first to start, because it was addressed to you, but others should also add their points of view.
All right, I'll try to make it quick then. In general, in terms of participation and engagement, we have already electronic solutions, suggestion systems, so I'm not going to talk about those. But in terms of engaging the public and the people of Dubai, in terms of happiness specifically, we have actually conducted lots of structured methods. We have done surveys and also face-to-face discussions with people. To be honest with you, we have reverse engineered happiness and turned it almost into a science. I know it sounds strange to you, but that's the case. Let me give you a few examples. We, for example, try to understand what makes people happy, and we used even AI techniques at the end from the answers that we received. So we talked to about 5,000 people by asking detailed questions in terms of their lives, in terms of their health, education. So the dimensions that I mentioned, the mobility, governance, we've asked several questions, and then we also asked them whether they are happy or not. And we asked them what they think, how happy they will be even in the future. Then we try to work backwards to understand what makes them happy. Is it that unhealthy people are not happy? Is it that highly educated people are happier? So we try to link all those issues back to happiness through literally mathematical correlations by analyzing all the data. And just to give you an example, out of the 6 dimensions that I mentioned, economy, in other words, having a proper job, and also the education level that they have, turned out to cover something like 60 to 70% of the happiness of people. For example, environment was not a major issue that they brought up. It doesn't mean that we don't act on them, but it was interesting to see that for people, their day-to-day things, what they feel are more important than some of the things that they don't perceive in general. So what we do is looking at these percentages, then we can work backwards and allocate our resources, action items, aligned with the needs of the people, rather than us betting on those dimensions and then coming up with action items. That to me was an eye-opener also, to be honest with you, seeing the real results, what people think, and then working backwards from people are very important. And similarly for private sector also. Under smart economy, we engage with them. We want to, for example, increase economical productivity, labor productivity in Dubai. We put targets for it by 2021, and they helped us to understand what we need in terms of sectors and solutions, and also for digital transformation of strategic sectors for Dubai.
Thank you, Orkan. I would now invite representatives for big companies to give us some, let's say, examples or what are the position of these companies with regards to engagement with the society. What is the experience of Siemens? What is the experience of IBM, Alibaba? Engagements with society, with citizens. So starting with Florian.
Well, Siemens is a company that's really providing large infrastructure projects and services to cities. We have, for example, also for the last project that we have executed more than 20 cities with already on at least the carbon part, a self-service available for citizens that they can basically assess any city. It's of course a rough estimate then, because the data collection process is usually half a year with lots of experts from the city for an individual city project. But this is how can citizens at least kind of engage in the process in terms of basically making their own estimations on what infrastructure would be right for their city. On the other hand, we really heavily rely on the communication of cities as our customers for infrastructure. And we have not gone so far that we've been taking over any part of that communication, since this is really a very sensitive part.
Very sensitive but very important. So we should work towards that in the future, and particularly UN should engage and also stimulate this discussion more. So I will give the floor to Alibaba, Mr. Chuang Kai. What is your view on that?
When we do the smart city project, this cannot be done by one single actor. So usually, the city, we talk about brownfield. Normally, it's kind of brownfield projects. So city already have some partners, local partners, who know the existing system, who know the different sectors. So what we do is we power the platform with technology, building blocks. We also bring our team of data scientists, but anyway, we need to work with the local partners recommended by the cities to understand the problem, because each city has different problem. Even in China, Hangzhou has problem of the cars, some city has problem of buses, etc. So it's a ecosystem. And we also contribute to it, the local universities, because we know that solving some short-term problem is okay, but we also need to maybe build some work with the university to certify, to train the students so that they will become the future data scientists and also engineers that can contribute. This is on the talent side. And through the startup programs, actually, we help cities to identify some high potential startups, and these cities can actually be a very good entry point to help this startup to make the application in real situation. And sometimes this could be a good surprise for city, because they will come up with some very disruptive solution.
Thank you. We go now to Markus Kontiger. What is your opinion about this?
Yeah, thanks to the speakers of Siemens and Alibaba, I can just underline their mentions, especially the term ecosystem is heavily used in IBM world. We founded 1.5 years ago the IoT, the global IoT headquarter in Munich, where one key element is the ecosystem. So Siemens and ABB, for instance, are partners in this area. We do not focus on the infrastructure side, therefore we have our competences in the partnership, but we have also a partnership with one of the world's biggest think tanks, it's Singularity University, which is supporting us in using our technology in the digital transformation, be it for smart cities or industrial 4.0. And we learned out of our smart city challenges, where we are acting worldwide, that you need to have certain stakeholders, and as said already a couple of times in the last hour, there is no one solution for a smart city. There is an individual solution based on the individual requirements of the city, and therefore in our cases the major workload in a smart city project is consultancy and understanding of the requirements of the people.
Thank you, Markus. Another question from the floor? One moment, just to see from this side, no one from this side as well, so I give the floor to you again.
For Markus Kottinger, I think you mentioned, if I understood correctly, that you've been using blockchain technology for Smart City Dubai. Could you explain how exactly was it used, for what practical purpose? Could you elaborate on that? Thank you.
So this is another very good example that you see the requirements of the city, and especially the culture of the citizens, is quite different. The blockchain project is not finished yet, but the plan is to digitalize the whole governance process, similar like we have in Estonia or in Scandinavia, that you don't have any paperwork anymore. You're going to use this information also in the healthcare environment, which is a no-go in Central Europe, for instance. So the target is to increase the efficiency in the public work process, workflow, as much as possible, to get rid of all these different data silos and of the scratch of the data transporters, so no paper anymore, for instance. And there is more or less the idea to have a digital twin of each citizen, which can be used then in every authorization process. That's basically the idea.
Thank you, intensively in the near future, because we also have a heavy administration, so it will be very useful for UN. And I'm sure that will be a project in this direction, because Mr. Guterres has already asked the opinion of international organizations how to apply artificial intelligence in UN system. So any other questions from the floor? Yes, please, you have the floor first.
I speak Chinese. 我的问题很简单，我在反复的听中，我觉得使用了两个概念，一个概念是智能城市，一个概念是智慧城市。我想请问这两个概念是同一个概念吗？我个人认为，我们现在有技术来支撑的这样一个城市啊，它应该是智能城市，而人的智慧或者说用 我们的思维来进行创新的城市，应该是智慧城市，这二者是有差异的。
There are differences between the two
我想请
concepts.
教一下。
I want to seek clarification from the panel.
Thank you very much. Professor Lund, can you answer this or respond to this?
I can give a response, but I can't answer. So, of course, you're right. We should be careful in using the word intelligence, talking about something that isn't a man or a woman, because we're not quite sure what intelligence is when talking about machines. But I think the terms smartness and intelligence tend to blur the more we talk about artificial intelligence, deep learning, and machine learning. I prefer, as you just suggested, to the term smart city, leaving intelligent to mankind, but I'm not quite sure if this will consist as long as I live.
Thank you. Mr. Chungkwai, artificial intelligence, and Mr. Kottinger, okay?
Yeah, definitely. One baby in IBM is our Watson artificial intelligence system. And believe me, we are working with that since 2006. And we learned a lot in that way, how people work, how people think. And it's not only bits and bytes, and it's not only mathematical stuff which makes things intelligent. So as long as we do not completely understand how a human is acting and how a human is thinking and doing things, it's very tricky to say that anything is human-like working. So I think we will get more and more assistant in our day-to-day life. We had the smartphone story already a couple of times in the last hour. So we assume that smartphones and tablets and PCs are dead. But there will be some new assistants helping us in our day-to-day business, assisting us in certain areas, learning from us a lot, that's true. But the way, as my speaker before said, the way that we see really human-like systems acting maybe will belong to our children or grandchildren.
Thank you, Marcus. Mr. Chongkai?
Yes, this reminds me of another conference that I had in the beginning of the year about also at the UN Geneva about AI impact on the interpretation real time. Will that replace interpreters? No, that will not replace interpreters. That will assist interpretation. And I remember I said at that time that the artificial intelligence will not replace human intelligence, because the real intelligence is the human that is behind, because we need human to modelize and then to train the system, and they are only tools. They are not as sophisticated as the human brain. So today the artificial intelligence is still in a very baby stage. So, but they can be efficient of doing some known task, and that human can make errors, but they can make less error than we do. So then we have time to do more creative and do decision-making things. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Any other question, please, from the floor? Yes, please. Floor is yours.
Thank you for the floor.
Can you please introduce yourself?
I'm Boris Berkovich from UNIDO's Department of Energy. When listening to the exceptional panelists, we hear terms such as Internet of Things, blockchain analysis, and all of these kind of have certain infrastructure elements that should be in place for a city or a country to be able to implement this efficiently. And then thinking about it in a UNIDO context, in our very specific mandate to be active in developing countries and countries with economies in transition, many of the cities located in these places do not have this basic infrastructure in place. So I just wanted to ask the panel, in general, what would be some of the major infrastructure investments necessary for a city such as, let's say, Addis Abeba, to be able to efficiently leapfrog to the next step and implement, let's say, the Internet of Things, blockchain analysis for their future development? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And actually, we had some discussion among us, so I will extend your question to the panelists and the speakers. It's not only to apply it in the context of developing countries, but also very crucially to the less developed countries. So, and what are the critical barriers to uptake of these new technologies in the cities in developing countries in general, but least developed countries more particular? So if you have been in vacation in any African countries recently, did you ever imagine how you can apply your knowledge in a fast-track manner for these countries? Is it possible? What are the barriers that you can immediately solve, or give advice to the government of these countries that they can use this solution in a fast-track mode, and in a short period of time there are some results? So I will ask the panelists, starting from Florian, and then very briefly, we have another couple of minutes to discuss. So from Florian to Okan to Professor Lund, and further from my left side.
Generally, IoT will give us the opportunity to manage especially small generation units and small consumers in a more efficient way that they usually wouldn't have been able to be managed. And well, maybe let me give you a little example of Madagascar, for example. They have just a few, in many places, just a few areas where there's really reliable power or over a longer period of the day. And oftentimes, they just have somebody basically doing some work in their garage, and suddenly the lights switched off in the entire area. So in that sense, it could be used, or can be used, for example, to manage really small parts of the grid that are switched off at a certain time if there is an exceeding of demand, in order to avoid the entire grid going down and having a large blackout. That would be a simple application. On the other hand, as I mentioned before already, a lot of those hurdles that we have in those countries is that we have a lot of non-technical losses. Basically, people are not really paying for the power. And therefore, the companies providing those infrastructures are not really able to invest. These are the main 2 points that I see in that action that could really help. Also include renewable power on a very small scale that can easily add up over time if demand is increasing.
Thank you, Florian. Just following on your suggestion, can you also, other panelists and speakers also address the issue, can we also have a project on industrial districts and integrate industrial districts in the city context? Is it possible to apply this ICT philosophy of having modules and system integration if you are not able to do it on the grand scale, but at a small district level? So, Okan, please.
I was going to say 2 points, but with yours, Olga, I'm going to probably mention 3 things. 2 things that come to my mind are, for example, if we take Dubai today, we are looking at blockchain as a competitive advantage. But if you look at from a technology life cycle point of view, technologies are becoming almost commodity in a few years. You know, things are changing very fast. Today, what we see as a competitive advantage, tomorrow becomes a commodity. So if you look at least developed countries, they have the chance of bypassing all the knowledge, the level of knowledge that developed countries have achieved. They can directly jump to the conclusions and leverage on the knowledge that are developed by the developing countries or developed countries. I think that's a very, very big advantage. So they can directly be transferred. Some of the knowledge that is attained by these countries can be transferred to least developed countries in an easier way. Of course, it's said easier than done, but they can short-circuit or bypass all the things that we go through when these technologies are disruptive and emerging at the beginning. So this is one side. Second side that I see as a big advantage is using these technologies as a shared service rather than reinventing the wheel for each and every organization in least developed countries. There are huge financial efficiencies that can be attained through shared services in technology. And I think, again, Dubai is one example because we have completely centralized the back office functions of the government. There is one system that runs the back office of all the more than 40 agencies, 40 government agencies in Dubai. But the core business, not the back office, but the core business, the front office is decentralized. So we have done this in a period of 15 years, and it works. And these solutions are available. So they can be transferred to, again, least developed countries easily to achieve efficiencies from a fiscal perspective. And regarding your point, Olga, we have created smart district guidelines in Dubai. We have more than, today, I think the number has reached now maybe 15 or so, smart districts where we pilot these smart city initiatives in a very limited area and then scale it up to other smart districts and then to the city level as well. And it works beautifully, as you suggested. And it's something that other countries can also think about, least developed countries, because jumping on with a huge plan at the city level and implementing and also spending all that money might not be feasible for all these countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Okan. Can we go now to Professor Schlund?
I'm too slow for the discussion. I'm still thinking about Addis Ababa, never having been there. And I can't answer your question, but I think it's worth thinking about new infrastructure and what would happen if we would stop repair roads in Addis Ababa and dig broadband cables instead. I'm not quite sure if this would be the end of the world for Addis Ababa, but I'm not quite sure if anybody would be as as brave as giving that idea a try.
Yeah, I think there's some infrastructure that the cities should, or that's the basic, that is the homework for cities, is to make sure that the infrastructure should be there, like water, electricity, transport, including roads, and internet. These are the basic infrastructure. And then we think that to help the developing countries or less developed regions of a country, because China is a developing country, we actually, not every city is like Shanghai or Beijing. There are many villages under poverty lines also. So I think most important is how to help the small business to grow, how to help them to do business through e-commerce is one of the ways. So one example we do since 2 years, we start to develop rural e-commerce. So thanks to e-commerce and mobile payment, we help the village people to sell their local products, the orange, walnuts, handcraft, through e-commerce platform to the world. So this is not asking huge investment for this village because they just need internet. And through the Alipay, we give them micro loan service. They can ask for small amount of loans in seconds, so which help them to solve the shortage, shortage problem. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Since we have to hurry up now and to close the session in a minute, so I will ask Mr. Kottinger to give his views very fast, and then to conclude with Mr. Kaimaz on this session.
Yeah, I guess we have to think about in two ways in this area. The first one is that there is already infrastructure out there. It's the telecom infrastructure, as I mentioned already. Therefore, we have huge partnerships with Inst Telecom, or Vodafone was mentioned in Turkey. It's also an IBM partner, or very soon. And Orange, so they are already there. They are in the pockets of the people's life. This is the one thing. The other thing, which is not only relevant for developing countries, because with our think tank Singularity University, we expect that 2020 we have 5 billion people in the internet. So imagine that everybody of these 5 billion people is sending one message per second. Also in the developed countries, we will get a problem with the current bandwidth and with the current cable infrastructure. So we have to think from a technology point of view, is it really necessary that we're going to get the data out of the devices and bring it to a cloud solution or whatever, and do more analytics on-site, so we call it analytics at the edge, and the big question is, do we have devices with the people around there in the developed countries and in the developing countries where we can provide software on-site and avoid the infrastructure discussion that much.
Well, to make the long story short and save from time, I agree with all of the speakers. And just one thing, I think in addition to infrastructure, education, qualified human resources is key to achieve and to uptake those technologies, because they are going to be the main actors who are going to implement those policies or projects.
Thank you. To conclude this session, I would like to inform you that we will prepare publication on this session. We will try also to upload all the presentations so that you could have access to this very rich presentation by each expert. And I would like to thank our panelists, our speakers, audience for a very interactive session. I think we have all learned a lot. And by this, I would like to invite you to give a big applause to the panelists, to the speakers, to yourself. It was a great session. Thank you very much for your attention.